My dear children, come, sit with me for a moment. Let an old woman tell you a story about loss, loneliness, and the unexpected kindness that brought me back to life. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and for most of my life, I believed I had raised good children. My son, Daniel, and my daughter, Rebecca, they were the center of my world. I worked 2 jobs, cooked every meal myself, stitched their clothes, and stayed awake through the night whenever either of them had a fever. I thought love worked like a circle, that what you give always finds its way back to you. But life doesn't always follow the rules we hope it will. It was last winter when my health took a terrible turn. My legs grew weak, the coughing got worse, and simple chores like boiling water or washing dishes felt like mountains I could no longer climb. Doctor visits stacked up, bills piled, and my children grew weary, not of my illness, but of the responsibility. I still remember that day with painful clarity. Daniel stood in my hallway, arms crossed, while Rebecca rubbed her forehead, her expression cold and impatient. "Mom, we can't take care of you anymore," Daniel said. "We have our own families, our own problems." Rebecca added quietly, "It's too much, Mom. We can't keep doing this. You'll have to manage on your own." They left before I could even respond, before I could even remind them that I once managed everything alone for them. The front door closed, and suddenly my home, a place once warm with laughter, fell silent, lonely, heavy. The kind of silence that presses on your chest until breathing becomes a chore. Days passed. I tried to keep myself upright, but my body was failing me. One cold evening, rain pounding on the windows, I collapsed in the kitchen. I wasn't sure how long I lay there. Minutes? Hours? Time became a blur. And before I continue, my dears, if you're listening, please remember to like this video and subscribe to Grandma's Story Studio. Your support helps an old lady keep telling stories from her heart. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, the moment everything changed. I heard footsteps outside, rushed, unsure, almost hesitant. Then a soft knock on the door. "Hello? Is anyone inside?" a young voice called. The door creaked open just a little, and a girl with rain-soaked hair peeked in. She couldn't have been more than 19. Her name, I would later learn, was Ava Martinez. Her eyes widened when she saw me on the floor. "Oh my God, ma'am, are you all right?" she cried, rushing to my side. And in that moment, in that dimly lit kitchen, with thunder rumbling behind her, a stranger became my lifeline. A stranger became the beginning of the family I never knew I needed. Ava's hands trembled as she helped me sit up, but her voice, soft, worried, sincere, never wavered. "Please hold on, ma'am. I'm calling for help," she said, fumbling with her phone. No hospitals," I managed to whisper. "Just help me sit." Her eyes softened with pity and determination. She slipped her arm behind my back, lifting me gently. For someone so young and small, she had a surprising strength, a strength that came not from muscles, but from her heart. Once I was seated against the cabinet, Ava hurried to fetch a blanket from the living room. When she returned, she wrapped it around my shoulders and glanced around the house, at the unpaid bills on the table, the unwashed dishes, the half-eaten soup on the stove. "Are you alone?" she asked softly. I nodded. Shame burned in my chest. She bit her lip. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked like that. I studied her then, her tired eyes, the dark circles beneath them, the cheap backpack hanging loosely from her shoulder. She looked like someone who carried burdens far heavier than her age should allow. Who are you? I asked. Ava, she replied. I live a few houses down. I walk this way after work. I saw your light flickering and thought maybe someone needed help. She paused, her voice dropping. And you did. She stayed with me that entire evening. She warmed up soup, encouraged me to eat, helped me take my medicine, and cleaned up the kitchen without being asked. At one point, she stepped outside to call someone. I overheard only part of it. Aunt Clara, I'll be late. No, I'm not wasting time. Someone here needs help. Her aunt must not have been happy, but Ava didn't budge. When the storm ended and the night grew colder, Ava finally stood to leave. But before she stepped out, she turned back and said, Ma'am, I'll come again tomorrow, okay? You shouldn't be alone like this. Nobody had said anything like that to me in years. True to her word, she returned the next morning, and the one after that, and the next. She began visiting daily, checking if I'd eaten, making sure I took my medicine, reminding me of doctor appointments, even folding laundry. She didn't treat me like a burden. She didn't look at me with irritation or impatience. She cared. Over the next week, I learned bits and pieces about her life. She lost both parents in a car accident when she was 14. She lived with her Aunt Clara, who provided shelter but not warmth. She worked at a grocery store and a diner after classes, struggling constantly to pay her college fees. Yet despite her own hardships, she gave her time to me. One evening, as she was leaving, she hesitated at the door and said, You remind me of my abuela. She used to take care of me. Maybe that's why I feel like I should take care of you. For the first time in months, my heart stirred. Because Ava wasn't just helping me, we were helping each other. The days that followed wove themselves into a gentle routine, one that slowly stitched together the tattered pieces of my heart. Each morning, I'd hear the soft creak of my gate, followed by Ava's cheerful little knock. Good morning, Miss Eleanor. I brought breakfast. Sometimes it was oatmeal she grabbed from the diner before her shift. Other times it was a simple sandwich she prepared herself. Always humble, always thoughtful. I began looking forward to those mornings more than I cared to admit. As my strength slowly returned, we started spending more time talking. Ava would sit beside me at the dining table, her backpack on the floor, her books spread open as she studied while I sipped tea. One afternoon, she asked shyly, Do you mind? I don't really have a quiet place to study at home. Not at all, I said, feeling warmth spread through my chest. This house has been silent far too long. And so, my silence became her sanctuary. In return, Ava filled the rooms with something I had almost forgotten: laughter. Her little jokes, her random stories about classmates, her complaints about rude customers at her job, they made the house feel alive again. I learned that she wanted to become a teacher someday. I want to help kids who feel lost, she told me, the way I felt after my parents passed. I reached for her hand then, frail fingers clasping her young, calloused ones. Child, you already help people, Ava, more than you know. There were moments when she'd quietly open up about her loneliness. She told me about her Aunt Clara, strict, distant, always reminding Ava how much she cost them. No softness, no affection, no warmth. That girl had been starved of love for too long. Sometimes, Ava whispered one evening, tears glistening in her eyes, I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I cupped her cheek gently. Child, you belong with someone who sees your heart, someone who knows your worth. And I see it, Ava. I truly do. Her tears fell then, not from sadness, but from relief. Slowly, we became inseparable. She cleaned when I couldn't. I taught her old recipes my husband, George, loved. She helped me walk in the backyard. I listened to her dreams. She brushed my hair when my hands trembled too much. Two broken souls, filling each other's cracks. Meanwhile, my own children remained ghosts. Daniel sent a single text. Hope you're managing. Rebecca didn't even bother with that. I pretended not to care, but late at night, the hurt pressed into me like a stone. Still, Ava's presence softened the ache. One sunny afternoon, while watching her tidy my porch, I murmured to myself, maybe she's an angel sent to me. But angels don't always come with wings. Sometimes they come carrying textbooks and wearing worn-out sneakers. It was around this time, when my energy began returning, that I decided to finally face a place I had avoided for years, my late husband George's old garage. Little did I know, that dusty room held a secret waiting to change both our lives. It had been nearly 15 years since I last stepped into George's garage. After his sudden accident, I simply couldn't. Every crack in the concrete floor, every dusty tool, every forgotten item seemed to carry a memory. His laughter, his gentle humming while he worked, his warm hands covered in grease whenever he came in for dinner. But that afternoon, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was Ava's presence. Maybe it was the return of strength I never thought I'd feel again. Or maybe it was the quiet whisper of my late husband guiding me. Miss Eleanor, are you sure you want to go in there? Ava asked, worried. I need to, I told her gently. It's time. The rusty handle squeaked as I pushed the door open. A puff of dust floated into the sunlight, making the air glitter like tiny stars. The familiar scent of old wood, oil, and time settled over me like a faded blanket. The room looked just as he left it. A workbench with scattered screws, a wooden box full of old photographs, a pair of his boots still standing neatly by the shelf as if he'd return any moment to slip them on. My breath caught. Ava noticed my trembling and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Take your time, she whispered. With slow steps, I began sorting through boxes, mostly old tools, broken radios he never fixed, and notebooks filled with his messy handwriting. Ava helped quietly beside me. After an hour, I reached the corner covered with a dusty tarp. Something about its shape made my heart beat faster. Rectangular, thick, familiar. I pulled away the tarp, revealing a weathered leather briefcase. Oh, I whispered, George's old case. The lock was rusted, but with a bit of force and Ava's help, it popped open. My fingers shook as I lifted the lid. Inside lay neatly stacked documents, envelopes, and a small metal tin. Tucked on top was an old photograph of us taken in our early marriage. Me in a blue dress, him holding me with that silly, proud smile. My eyes stung. Under the photograph, I found an envelope with faded handwriting. For our old age, Ellie. My heart stopped for a moment. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside were brightly colored stock certificates, each one dated over 50 years ago. The name printed on them was a small tech company that I vaguely remembered George talking about long ago. Is that valuable? Ava asked. I don't know, I whispered, but a deep, strange feeling settled inside me. I kept digging and found letters, George's notes, explaining how he bought these shares hoping they would grow so we could retire comfortably. But he never got the chance to tell me. For the first time in years, I felt his love reaching across time, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I clutched those papers tightly to my chest. George, I whispered through tears, what did you leave behind for me? Little did I know, this garage held the key to a miracle, one that would change everything. I sat on the old garage floor for a long time, the stock certificates spread across my lap like fragile relics. My fingers brushed over each one, tracing the faded ink, the embossed seals, the startling numbers printed in George's careful handwriting on the back of one envelope. Bought at $3 each. $3. For a moment, I chuckled bitterly. What company is this? Ava asked, squinting at the name. I told her, and she typed it into her phone. Her eyebrows shot up. Miss Eleanor, this company, this is huge now. I blinked. Huge? I mean, huge! Their shares are... Oh my God! She looked at me with wide eyes. Ma'am, I think these might be worth a lot. My heart thumped painfully. A lot could mean $1,000, maybe two. Anything felt like a blessing at that point. I thought about ignoring it, leaving the papers in the garage where they'd been sleeping for 50 years. But something tugged inside me. George's handwriting, his planning for a future he never lived to see, his love that somehow survived the decades. I owed it to him to find out. The next morning, Ava insisted on going with me to a financial office downtown. I wore George's old wool coat. It made me feel braver. Ava sat beside me in the bus, holding the briefcase protectively on her lap. We'll figure this out together, she said. Her words warmed me more than the coat. At the office, a young financial advisor named Michael Turner welcomed us. He had that polished, confident smile people in tall buildings often have. When I laid the old certificates on his desk, his expression shifted from amusement to confusion, and then to shock. Mrs. Hayes, he said slowly, lifting one paper gently. Do you know what you have here? I swallowed. My husband's old investments. They can't be worth much. He cleared his throat. Well, your husband bought these shares 50 years ago? Yes. And they've been untouched all this time? Yes. He sat back in his chair, exhaled, then leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. Mrs. Hayes, these shares have appreciated beyond anything you could imagine. My breath caught. Ava grabbed my hand. How much? I whispered. He typed rapidly, pulled up charts, numbers, old mergers, stock splits, more than I could understand. Then he turned his monitor toward me. The number on the screen didn't look real. Not in my world. Not in my life. Is that... I stammered. Yes, ma'am, he said softly. After all the splits and growth, your shares are worth several $million. My vision blurred. The room rocked. Ava squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. Miss Eleanor, you're rich, she whispered, half laughing, half crying. Rich? No. I was free. I was safe. I could live without fear. I could finally breathe. And for the first time since George died, I felt him standing beside me. His love had traveled 50 years to reach me. But the very next day, My children learned the news, and everything changed. News travels fast in small towns, especially when it involves money. By the next morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, folders of financial documents neatly stacked beside me, when I heard the front door swing open without a knock. "Mom!" Daniel's voice. For a moment, my heart lifted instinctively. Old habits die slow deaths. But then the weight of everything he had done came crashing back, and the warmth inside me dimmed. He rushed in wearing an expression I hadn't seen in years. Concern, tenderness, or at least a performance of it. Rebecca followed close behind, her smile stretched too tight, her arms full of grocery bags she never would have brought otherwise. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were sick?" Daniel asked dramatically. I stared at him in disbelief. "You knew." Rebecca stepped in quickly, her voice sweetened with guilt-coated honey. "We're here now, Mom. That's what matters. You should have called us. You know we would never leave you alone." Ava, who had been washing dishes quietly, froze. Her eyes flicked to me with worry. I gave her a small nod. I wanted her to stay. Daniel glanced at her, frowning. "Who are you?" Ava stepped forward politely. "I'm Ava. I've been helping Miss Eleanor the past few months." Rebecca's eyes narrowed just a little, just enough for me to see the calculation behind them. "Oh," she said, smiling thinly, "that's, kind of you." There was a moment of silence before Daniel finally said what he came for. "Mom, we heard about the, stock situation?" He tried to sound casual, but his eyes gleamed. "That's incredible, really. And of course, as your children, we want to help you manage it." "Help me?" I repeated softly. Rebecca pulled out a brochure from her purse. "We've already scheduled an appointment with our financial planner. He'll take care of everything. You don't need to stress at your age." My age. Funny how they only remembered it now. Daniel added, "It's only right that family handles family money." I looked at Ava, who was staring down at her shoes, her face tight with discomfort, and my decision became crystal clear. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly. "Daniel, Rebecca, I appreciate your sudden interest in my well-being, but no one will be touching my finances except me." They stared at me. "And," I continued, "I won't be moving in with either of you. I won't be signing anything over. I won't be joining any retirement home you suggest." "Mom!" "No." My voice was firm, stronger than it had felt in years. "When I was sick and helpless, you both walked away. This young woman," I gestured to Ava, "took care of me without expecting a single thing in return." Ava's eyes glistened. "So the blessings that have come my way will be shared with the person who earned them with kindness, not guilt." Daniel's face flushed. "You're choosing a stranger over your own children?" I met his gaze steadily. "I am choosing love over convenience." Silence filled the room like a storm about to break. They left shortly after, anger hidden under stiff smiles. And as the door closed behind them, Ava whispered, "Miss Eleanor, you really meant that?" I reached for her hand. "My child, I am choosing the family who chose me." The days that followed were unusually peaceful. My children stayed silent, perhaps processing my words, or perhaps calculating another angle. Either way, I no longer felt afraid. I no longer felt abandoned. I no longer felt small. I had something far stronger now. Choice. One crisp morning, I invited Ava to sit with me in the living room. She looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "Miss Eleanor," she began softly, "if this is about the other day, I never meant to come between you and your family." "My dear," I interrupted gently, "you didn't. They abandoned me long before you ever stepped into my life." Her eyes shimmered, but she stayed quiet. I reached into the folder beside me and pulled out a printed document. "Ava, how much do you owe for your college tuition?" She stiffened. "Why?" "Just answer me." She hesitated, then whispered, "Almost $28,000? I nodded slowly. "And how much do you earn in a month?" "After paying my aunt, maybe 600. The pain in her voice made my throat tighten. This child had carried so much alone. I placed the document gently into her hands. She skimmed it, and her face went pale. "Miss Eleanor, what is this?" "It's a full scholarship," I said, my voice warm. "Paid in full. For the rest of your studies. College, books, transportation, everything." She covered her mouth, sobbing into her palms. No, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not charity," I said, placing my hand over hers. "It's gratitude. You kept me alive. You gave me company when I have none. You reminded me every day that love still exists in this world." "But, and," I added firmly, "George would have wanted this. He believed kindness should always circle back." She broke down completely, burying her face in my shoulder. I held her the way I imagined a grandmother should, with both arms, with all my heart. That afternoon, we visited the college office together. When her fees were marked as paid, Ava cried again, this time with relief, this time with hope. From that day forward, everything changed. We hired a small team to help me restore the house. I insisted Ava stay with me whenever she needed peace from her aunt's cold home. Soon, she began spending more nights here than there. We cooked dinner together, studied together, watched old movies together, and, slowly, the house felt like a home again. Ava blossomed like a flower that had finally found sunlight. Her laughter echoed in the halls. Her books were scattered on the dining table. Her dreams grew bigger. And mine? My dream was simple: to give her the life she deserved. Neither of us knew then how beautifully our futures would intertwine, but fate was already working quietly behind the scenes. Because love, real love, has a way of returning in the sweetest form. As I sit here now, telling you this story, the sunlight is slipping gently through the lace curtains of my living room. Our living room. The house doesn't feel empty anymore. It doesn't echo sadness. It hums with life, laughter, and the tiny footsteps of a 5-year-old boy who calls me Grandma Ellie, even though we share no blood. And maybe that's what makes it even more special. Because family isn't always about who you are born to. Sometimes, family is about who stays when everyone else walks away. Emma, my sweet Emma, is grown now, married to a good man named Daniel, kind, hard-working, with a soft voice that always greets me first thing in the morning. Their little boy Lucas has the brightest smile I've ever seen. He follows me around the house, asking questions, showing me his drawings, tugging at my sleeves to play with me in the garden. I look at him and feel something warm bloom inside my chest every single time. Emma still calls me Grandma, the same way she did on the day I left the hospital, and she wrapped her arms around me like she was promising she'd never let me be alone again. And she kept that promise. Our days now are peaceful in a way I once believed I would never experience again. In the mornings, I sit on the porch with a cup of tea while Emma rushes around preparing Lucas's backpack for school. Daniel warms up the car while Lucas runs back inside because he forgot to hug Grandma goodbye. In the evenings, Emma cooks dinner while I read stories to Lucas or help him draw pictures of the trees outside. Sometimes he climbs into my lap and tells me he loves me as much as the whole sky. And that is when I often close my eyes because the happiness is almost too much to hold. My own children? They do call now, occasionally, but I no longer wait for their voices. I no longer measure my worth by how often they remember me. I forgave them for the pain, for my own peace, but they chose their path. And I chose mine. And that path led me to Emma, to Daniel, to Lucas, to a home reborn with laughter instead of silence. Yes, I have wealth now, enough to live comfortably, enough to give Emma and her family everything they need for a beautiful life. But what I treasure most is not the money. It is the love I found when I least expected it. The love I didn't know I still deserved. The love that rebuilt me. So, my dear listeners, this is my story. A story of loss, loneliness, rediscovery, and the quiet miracle of being loved again. And if you have a story like this, one of heartbreak, struggle, kindness, or hope, please don't forget to share it with us. Write to the email address in the description below. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the family you find is the family meant for you all along.